everybody, Simon at Fine Living here. Thanks for checking out my video. This video is going to focus on property investment in London. It's my own version of how to get into property investment. We're going to tackle some of the terminology, try and clear up some of the jargon that is often used, and I'm going to give you 8 phases, 8 stages of investing in London property. Okay, so jargon, terminology first. Results from London property investments usually come in 2 forms. Firstly, capital appreciation. Secondly, rental income. Both sound complex? Let's see. Capital appreciation. This is the increase in the property value over time. As property prices rise, so does the equity that you hold in your investment. Okay, that's capital appreciation. The other one is rental income, slightly easier. This is the monthly, yearly, annual rent, however you want to break it down, that the tenants are paying you to live in the property, providing a reliable, passive source of income over time. So now let's look at some of those phases that I mentioned to get into investing in London. So number 1, learn about the market. I think it's pretty important that you become a bit of an expert in the area in which you're targeted. How do you target an area? What are the things to look out for? Well, there's a multitude of information out there which can guide you on upcoming tube stations, areas that have been invested in, maybe governments are putting funds into a particular regeneration project, and many, many more. You can look at simple things like where do people holiday, what are popular destinations, but all of that information you need to pull together and make some decisions around where exactly you're going to target. Tied into number 1 is really choosing the right location, and because there's an investment for you, by definition you're targeting tenants. So what are tenants looking for? Well, in particular, if you're looking in zones 1 and 2, you probably want proximity to underground stations, you want proximity to green spaces, you might want to target some of the different sectors, so for instance where the financial hub is, you might want to target areas of Old Street where the tech development's taking place, or even out in Stratford where the regeneration from the Olympic project many years ago has brought thousands of jobs and infrastructure there. You might just simply look at, popular walking or running routes that exist, and all these things are what tenants are considering when they're taking on a new home. I left it till third, but arguably it's one of the most important: budgeting for your investment. So how are you going to finance your investment? Is it going to be cash? Is it going to be mortgage? Or are you going to remortgage? I'll come to remortgage in a little while. Cash, pretty straightforward. You have the funds for the purchase. They're sitting in an account somewhere, and you just use those funds to complete on the transaction. Mortgage, for me, is quite simple, but I appreciate everybody will know what a mortgage is. This is where a bank will loan you the money required for the home. For investment, the chances are you won't get anything like all of the money from the bank. You will need some form of deposit. That varies in percentages dramatically up and down the country and across the spectrum of mortgage providers. But we're looking at London alone, so the chances are you're going to need a good 15-20% of purchase price as your deposit. Additionally, you're then going to need to think about your tax requirements. So you'll hear lots of acronyms: CGT, SDLT, and many more. SDLT, stamp duty land tax. This is a tax that you will pay on your purchase, and this is a buyer will pay this on the purchase of the property. CGT, capital gains tax. This is actually if you come to sell the property at a later date, you may trigger, because you had some capital appreciation, you may trigger this tax. On both of these, absolutely consult an accountant or solicitor to get more information. And then finally, of course, income tax. The government has changed mortgage relief in the last few years, so now any income that you're receiving for your rental property potentially will cost you. You'll ultimately be paying some tax on. So the best advice with all of these 3 parts of the tax is to speak to an accountant before you proceed. So you've checked out your market, you've picked your location, you've got your money together, you're now aware of what taxes you've got. Now you want to go and see what properties are available. So you don't start with the properties, you do all of that in this sequence. So what is available? There are many property portals that you can use. You can go around and look at estate agents' offices if they've got a shop front still. You can go and see boards if agents have got boards. You can just sit in the comfort of your own home, type into Google or Bing or whatever search engine that you like to use, and just find properties that are available. Now it's time to assess the available properties. How do I do that? There are property portals. You can walk the streets and look at boards. You can just go to target areas that you selected earlier. You can sit in the comfort of your own home and you can search within a search engine or an AI assistant and find out what's available. Some of the classic things you will want to know, I've covered in a blog, which I will pop in the chat later. But some of the really important questions you want to think about when you're buying an investment property are simple things like how long is left on the lease and how much is a service charge. You've identified the property, you've completed on the property, you may or may not have a tenant already. Now you want to think about who's going to look after that property for you, so the management of it. A lot of investors that start out keep the management to themselves to start with. It keeps costs lower because they're actually using their own time rather than making a payment to a managing agent. A number of investors that I work with, from the start, they decide that they're going to use an agent like myself, and they will allow that agent to manage the property for you. Either way, be assured that the tenant and the property will require management. Okay, so now we've got to the phase where we've got the purchase, the tenants in the property is being looked after. Now it's time to grow the portfolio. What do we now do? Are we reinvesting some of the funds that we've taken out from the current property that we purchased? Are we using additional funds? Are we waiting for a time in the future where we'll be able to draw out some of the money that exists in the previous purchase? All of those decisions seek some financial advice on, but when you're ready to start your next purchase, you go right back to the start and run this whole sequence again. So my final thoughts on investing in London property. Done correctly, you will have a high rental yield. You will have rental income that is covering your costs, maybe even returning a small residual amount each month or each year. And you will have purchased something that has long-term capital appreciation if you handle it correctly. For more tips on how to handle a property purchase correctly, reach out to myself, Simon at Fine Living. Thanks for watching, guys.